Hello?
Yes po, ma'am. Hello po.
Ikaw na yung mag-share?
Opo, ma'am. Nakashare na po. Sabihin nyo na lang po kung i-move ko po yung slide.
Okay. So, we have the first slide. Correct?
Opo, first slide.
Okay. So, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Beekeepers from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We are really very pleased that you were able to come. To listen at this webinar. Now, actually, we will share with you our project output funded by the DA Bar, most especially our engagement in rural areas, kind of building an enterprise, and the areas of concerns are Lanao Del Norte and Oriental Mindoro. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, may we have the next slide? Hello?
Okay na po, ma'am. Ma'am, sa studio po kayo, ma'am, mag-access po para nakikita nyo rin po yung sinishare po natin.
Saan?
Sa studio po natin, ma'am.
Sige. Just...
Apo.
How?
Yung sa tab po ng StreamYard po, ma'am.
Okay na?
Nakita nyo na po, ma'am, yung studio natin?
Yeah, I see you. So, and
po, ma'am. Na lang po natin po
I see the second slide. So I can move on.
Sige po.
Tama? Okay. Now, as you know, Philippines being in the Asian region is paradise for bees. We have a lot of native bee species, and being native to Asia, these bees are very easy to mass produce, a very wide genetic pool. Now, this is for this reason that we chose the native bee species for use in especially in rural communities. Moreover, we have less capitalization compared with the European honeybees. Although there's nothing wrong with European honeybees, it's just that it needs higher capitalization. Next slide, please. Now, beekeeping actually contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals. You know, this is the mandate of the United Nations. There are 17 goals, and beekeeping would really address all of these goals. Next. Next slide, please. Now, why stingless bees? Among the so many species of bees, why stingless bees? Now, because previously we have done a lot of studies on stingless bees, and it proved to be, well, very sustainable, and they are good pollinators as well. Now, since it is local, it pollinates best the local species. Now, because local bees, local pollinators pollinate local plant species. So you cannot go wrong with our local species. They are very resistant to pests and diseases. Next slide. And there are revenue from bee products. The more popular, of course, the stingless bee honey. And we are aware of its high clinical value because it has high phenolics, antioxidant property, and it is often used in apitherapy. Now, when we say apitherapy, now this is the utilization of bee products for health, for medicine, on top of its recognition as additive for food. And we have a good market, potential market for propolis. So, honey, propolis, and then we have pollen. They produce a lot of pollen. But do you know that these are the cheapest product from the hive? Now, if you do value adding, production of soap, cosmetics, shampoo, and even winemaking. Now you will make more money. So there are revenues from these bee products. Next. Next slide, please. But most importantly, it is the pollination service, especially in agriculture. Beekeeping should be an integral part of agriculture. Now, we all know the role of bees in pollination, that it contributes huge factor in increasing crop productivity, especially those requiring outcrossing. So we can sell or we can offer pollination services, especially in huge plantation crops. Why do they need pollinators? Well, especially in monoculture, now because there are no more habitats for native bees. That's why it may be necessary to be introducing colonies of bees. And the best, of course, for mango and avocado are our stingless bees. Next, please. It is profitable, but beekeeping is a game of numbers. You need 1,000 colonies to start off. But if you are just a beginner, you just start with like 4 colonies and then learn about it and then expand when you have gained or earned the skills. Now, listed here are the sources of revenue from honey, pollen, propolis, and then together with our economist, we collaborate with Dr. Agham Cuevas because he is the economist. So the IRR, or internal rate of return, is 21%. Net present value, 42,000. Payback, less than 2 years. And the benefit cost ratio is 1.31. So based on their views on economic standards, now it is profitable. But of course, it is a given that all the enabling conditions are present. You have the skills, you have the bee pasture, so all those requirements for the build-up of the colony. Okay, next slide, please. Community-based enterprise. Now, because in any endeavor, we must always look for financial advantage. Now, community-based enterprise is easy to implement actually if you know the approach. So we will be sharing with you the training approach and how we did it. It applies to poor, vulnerable, and marginalized communities like Lanao Del Norte. Communities that are hard to reach due to social or geographical isolation. Of course, we won't be doing this exercise in Metro Manila, in NCR. Now, in Lanao Del Norte, we had 3 sites. We have the Kapatagan, Sultan de Naga, de Maporo, and then we have Tubod. Only 3 adjacent communities. Actually, this kind of bottom-up approach, because this is the need of the community, they indicated their interest in having a project of this sort because they need additional income. These are, majority of them are Muslim. And then, there were some problems then, peace and order, so economic crisis. And of course, we consider also the potential role of bees in increasing their yield of coconut, which is their major crop. So, there we go. Next slide, please. We need additional colony holdings. These are the Tetragonula beroi. We call this the commercial species because we have a lot of species of stingless bees, but we chose one that are easy to propagate, reproduces in huge number. But take note, before we introduce this species, before we brought into Lanao, we made sure that there are reports there were previous record of the occurrence of these bees in Lanao because we have a policy as regards introduction of biological materials. We should not be bringing in any specimen, yeah, any organism in places where there were no reports before, because it will set back the ecosystem. It will set back the systematics or classification of these species or biological species. So it has an impact on biodiversity. Next slide, please. Now, what were the steps? Site validation is very important. We did not bring colonies right away. We'd like to find out, is this site really good for beekeeping? And so what did we look at? Now, first, are there enough forage resources? If not that adequate, we need to propagate more of the bee plants. Source of water is important. Now, on some notes, of course, we look into the peace and order situation and the reception of the community. The interest is the interest there, and the cooperation of the LGU. You know, we have a good engagement with the local government unit. So the agriculturist office, provincial governor, so they give us full support, and other non-governmental organizations. Now, we identified 3 sites. As mentioned, we have Tubod, Kapatagan, Sultan de Maporo. So we did the monitoring, site validation. And then we started training the community. So training the 3 sites. Now, this is not just a one-shot training. This is the secret. Now, beekeeping is a process. So if you will just conduct few trainings, it may not be enough. Now, because they will not learn all the processes. So, our conditions, now sometimes we set some requirements to ensure the success of the project, because otherwise our efforts will be futile and then the resources may be wasted. So, the communities, in each of the communities, during the first training, they attended. So it is not a kind of dispersal that we will just be distributing the colonies after the training. So they decided to put the colonies, the bee colonies, at one site only. So during the first training, everybody were there. And then we were excited. How about in the next training? So they learned to be familiarized with the bee, so getting to know you, and then some lecture and the basic biology. And then we went back after few months, 1 quarter. Now, because what are we going to do with the colonies that we brought in? Is this time for expansion? Do we need additional chamber? Do we divide the colony? So are the colonies stable? So, fortunately, and we are very much pleased that those who attended the first training were also present during the second training, and so on and so forth in the span of 2 years. Now, because we have in mind that those who can complete the training are really interested and they deserve to be the beneficiary of this project. So everybody, and this holds true to the 3 communities in Lanao del Norte. Now, monitoring is also the key. Now, because without monitoring, your project will go nowhere. Because I know of many training, many projects that were not monitored and the fund, it did not prosper. So, sayang lang po ang taxpayers' money. So we would like to be ensured really that everything will be in order. So this took place in the span of 2 years. Okay, next slide. So, yeah. This is just to show you some images of our activities, so installation of the colonies in the sites that we have validated. Now, most importantly, preparation of bee plants. So I'd like to advise everybody that before you start beekeeping, even with Apis mellifera or any species of bees, make sure that there are enough bee pasture. Now, if it is not adequate, now you can mass produce it. So it's really it's a dedicated effort. And then yeah, growing of bee plants now, because there is also science in growing bee plants. So the medium, the fertilizers, yes, as important as growing an economic crop. Now we conducted in the span of 2 years. Actually, we did spot training on the bee product processing, and of course, we from the academe, we would like to contribute to new knowledge on pollination biology. So we did pollinator profiling now because we'd like to find out if with the addition of bee plants, now what is the status of the pollinators in the province? Because it will guide in the conservation, and it is, yeah, as I have said, contribution to knowledge. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so I think you have seen this pollinator profiling. So can we have the next slide? Okay. Now we taught honey harvesting. This is, of course, very, very exciting. Next slide, please. Honey harvesting, and then how to get the pollen, because there is a method for getting the pollen. And the next slide, how to cut or how to harvest the propolis. Mind you, yeah, we have a good market for propolis, so you must be getting the right one. Okay, next. And then a bountiful harvest. Okay. So you have there pollen, you have a patch of honey, and then you have the propolis. Okay, next slide, please. So actually, after the 2-year engagement, we had a celebration, and we called it Lanao Day. So all the participants were there. Now, because on the second year, it was the time for colony expansion. We were very pleased. There were no single bee mortality. So we retained all the hives, and it increased because we propagated it. We expanded it. So additional colony, no mortalities. Now because yeah, the site was good, the people were excited, and they were cooperative. So we celebrated this closing, the culminating activity. Everybody was excited. We did, or they did the product harvesting. Okay, next slide. You see how excited they are. Okay. So majority, actually many women, but the husbands also participated in this activity. Okay, next. It was a grand celebration though. Next slide. And then you have there the product which are ready for marketing. So in that event, all the members of the 3 communities were present, and we call it the Lanao Bee Day. It's just a counterpart of like we have the World Bee Day, so why not have Lanao Bee Day? So it is a celebration of success. It is a celebration of how the people are organized, a celebration of cooperation, a celebration of a fruitful collaboration. Okay, next slide. So of course, photo obsession. And it did not stop there. It did not stop in the grand activity by which they harvest the product and then they process it, they bottled it ready for market. Now, they asked for a graduation ceremony. So why not? So we had a graduation. Everybody received certificate. So it's just like a course and they feel great. It boosts their morale because it's a two-year engagement. So you have there you go, the three communities, Kapatagan, Tubod, Sultan Naga de Maporo, and on the other side we have there representative of the Bar, Miss Eve, and Jillian, the B program team, a representative from Lanao Del Norte, and we call ourselves the colony. Okay, next slide, please. That's why, because of the relative success of that engagement, 2-year engagement, so the communities learn, they have the colonies, they can earn some additional source of income. So fortunately, in 2019, we have this phase 2 of the project because in order for it really to be substantial, to become an enterprise, there should be an increase in colony holding. And so what we did, there were funds. So thank you to the Bar. We were given fund to increase the colony holding. So it is in addition to their existing colony. But along with that, we enhance the bee pasture. Now, because can you imagine with the increase in the number of colonies, you really need to increase forage resources. And we are now into product commercialization. Now, of course, the major setback is the restriction on the travel. But before the pandemic, we were able to visit there more than 3 times. But we still need to monitor. But we have a ground crew there. We have a collaborator. So we just communicate. Thank you to modern communication facility. So we keep on interacting with them. So advice, and then we look at the colonies. So we are updated of the existing activities. So we hope that we can soon travel to our 3 sites at Lanao del Norte. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is the second community. Mindoro is entirely different. It is at Barangay Loyal, and we are dealing with, or we are associated here with the Mangyan community. So a background, we had some initial collaboration with ABS-CBN. Next slide, please. We have the organization there is called Pulot Tadyawan Association, consisting of 60 members. So we have helped them before, and the fund came from this Bantay Kalikasan, the ABS-CBN. So it was a jump start of this bigger project now. Okay, next slide. So in 2018, it was an engagement with ABS-CBN, indigenous community. Actually, now this is a Mangyan community. So poverty, they really have problem with economics and the social issues. So we with ABS-CBN, they help or plan to at least ameliorate the economic and social conditions of the people in the community. Next slide. So of course, our scheme training, follow-up training. So the same model, the same activity as we did in Lanao del Norte. Okay, but of course, it's more challenging to be dealing with the IPs now, because we have to look at to the economic and social issues then. Okay, next slide. Now, it took 1 year. And fortunately, our colonies, the bee colonies that were funded by ABS-CBN, and it collaborated. It was also funded by DSWD and other individuals in the community. So there was a turnover of the project after 1 year. So actually, this is Bantay Kalikasan Honey Production Project turnover. So it's time to give the project to the Mangyan. Because initially, our model is that, okay, we will locate this, we will put all the colonies in one site, and then when we manage the colony, during training, monitoring, everybody should be there. And it really happened. Everybody were there. And then up to the point that after the time that it's the turnover, that they will own the project, they will own the colonies. So they harvest, they earn some income, and it was being, the ABS-CBN helped in the marketing of the project. Okay, next slide, please. So just the same, we taught the community all the processes, propagation, harvesting, yeah, expansion. Okay, next, please. And processing of product. This is very important. Now, that's why we need a clean kitchen, a facility to process the product, especially now that the project has expanded. Now there is a lot of potential there now because because of our partners and our approach in this community development. Okay, next slide, please. So, this is an image of one of the activities, this Bantay Kalikasan project turnover. So everybody, as in Lanao, everybody were excited. Okay, next. Next slide. So, turnover ceremony. So, you have staff from ABS-CBN, DSWD, the LGU, and some of the leaders in the IP communities. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay. The problem with there were some issues. ABS-CBN, everybody knows that. So there were some difficulty then as regards funds. Now it's where we are thankful to DA-ASEF because they looked into, they are helping in the commercialization of the stingless bees in this site. So they picked up because we were able to show. They also validated. They know this project. That's why, they gave additional fund. So we are moving into commercialization and for it to become an enterprise. Okay, next slide, please. So it started in 2019. So in addition to the existing colonies, which were not really that many, we brought in additional colonies. Now, because, we had additional sites. Now, there was a conflict, military conflict in Barangay Loyal. So there were displaced communities and they really requested that they also be considered for the project. So in addition to the old communities, I mean the previous communities that we assisted, we set up another site. Okay, next slide, please. So there you go. This is just very recent. In midst of the pandemic, we really managed to go to visit. I mean, to continue with the project after complying with strict requirement for travel. So we brought in colonies in additional sites. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, all right. So um, some of the colonies. Okay, next. Yeah. Now it's very, yeah, we are very happy. It's really heartwarming. Now, because when we brought in the bee plants, now because we needed additional pasture. Now, when we brought in the bee plants together with the bees, just very recent, I think this within this, in April, yeah, early June. The children help. So you see them carrying the pots, and they are really very willing to help in the propagation of the bee plant. So yeah, it's kind of bringing hope for the future. So these children, now it's not child labor though, it's very easy and they enjoy it, they volunteer. Now, these are the displaced communities. So these children used to live in the mountain and their families moved. So this is the new site that we are establishing now. So we have yet to conduct further training to this community. So hoping that when the condition improve, now we can fast track this project. But nevertheless, we must find solutions on how we can address, on how we can build up this community because of the potential. You have the area, you have the people, we have the partners, and of course we have um, the DA bar. So that we are very thankful because with their support reaches out. It goes a long, long way, and it can somehow improve the condition of our of the communities, most especially the disadvantaged and depressed communities. Okay, so yeah, next slide. I think yeah, I need to. Yeah, we prepared a model though of to summarize all the things that I discussed. Now, when we think of a community-based enterprise, it may not be beekeeping, but this one is unique. Yeah, it holds true to beekeeping. There are four major considerations. One, environment. Like invalidation, are there enough forage resources? Water is also important. Suitable climate, and it should be pesticide free. Now, because beekeeping will not prosper in an environment that is laden with pesticides. So, environment is one. Number two is social. So, we consider religion. Like we have the Muslim in Lanao, and then we have also the Mangyan community. Now we will not be teaching how to make like mead or wine in these communities that that wine is prohibited. So gender. So we respect the gender, but it doesn't limit even if it were intended for women. No, because beekeeping usually the processing of the product is done by mostly women, and then but the hard work would be done by the male. So social, we need collaborators. There should be linkages. So this is the importance of opening up collaborators. And then take note, monitoring is very important also. And we take note of the occupation of the people. So are they only depending on the farming, or are they fisher folks, And then next is economics, market demand. There is no problem now because the beekeeping products command a good market price as long as it will conform with the standard. That's why together with the ABAR, it has been our advocacy to standardize the bee product. Now, before it can enter the market, even local or global market, now the product should be authentic. It should conform with the international standard. By the way, we already have standards for honey. And it's nice that the data used for crafting that standard, our product of our researches with the DA bar, isn't it? We had product on standardization. So we used all those data. And we have also the code for best beekeeping practices. And also when we deal with foreign market, the buyers would validate the site to make sure that you are following the best beekeeping practices. For example, in marketing propolis, you will not just bring all the sacks of propolis in one place and sell it. The buyers, potential buyers, have yet to look at your site because, to make sure that the propolis is of good quality, and then you follow the best practice. Now, most especially also for honey, there should be a certificate of analysis. So as long as these requirements are met, now there is a great market demand for these products. So no problem with market. And then public policy and governance. Equally important as environment, social, and economics. Now, take note of the Wildlife Act. The problem with the stingless bee is that the natural populations, the wild populations, or what we call feral colonies, are already diminishing in the wild or in the forest. Now, because of indiscriminate hunting, indiscriminate harvesting of the colony. Some will just be getting the colony, get the honey, and then throw away the brood. So we should not do that, because otherwise our genetic resources will be lost. That's why we promote really domesticating the colony as we domesticate the honeybees, so that our genetic resources, wild colonies, will be protected. So actually, hunting of feral colony is prohibited by law. It is covered by the Wildlife Act. And then we are also guided by the Code for Best Beekeeping Practices and Production Standards and the Food Safety Act. Now, when you process the product, like honey, it will be under the FDA. But if the honey will be sold as raw honey, well, it is under the supervision and under the Bureau of Animal Industry in view of the Food Safety Act. Now, all of these, if met together, if done together, if we consolidate and organize, now it can result to a viable and sustained enterprise that hopefully can lead to an improved livelihood livelihood opportunities, and most especially on our end, biodiversity maintenance. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for listening. And if there are other questions, we'll try our best to address some issues and questions. Thank you. Yeah, last slide please for the acknowledgement. So we'd like to acknowledge the Bureau of Agricultural Research, Department of Agriculture, Local Government Unit, Lanao Del Norte, Barangay Loyal Oriental Mindoro, and then of course the DSWD in Loyal, and ABS-CBN, who started the project at the indigenous community in Mindoro. Okay, thank you.
So maraming salamat po ma'am sa pag-share po ninyo ng inyong experience sa inyong project. So dumako na po tayo sa Q&A na po. So meron po tayong mga questions na nakalap mula sa comments natin. So unahin na po natin. So ma'am, if interesado po na mag-alaga o mag-venture into apiculture, meron po bang mga resources like babasahin, instructional videos, or even trainings po na pwedeng ma-avail po yung ating mga viewers po?
Meron na tayong available. I think the DA-BAR has documented yung mga stingless bee propagation. So meron na tayo sa DA-BAR na video presentations. And then sa UPLB, nag-offer din tayo ng training courses. Pero ngayon, online na eh. So we conduct 4 days na virtual, and then we have 1 day of practicum. Tapos limited yung number. Yeah. Ang isa ko ding masasabi, yung training kasi dapat din yung okay yung magtuturo, because there may be some misinformation. Kaya we need to standardize also sana yung mga training, especially for stingless bees. Okay.
Okay. So with regard po dun sa mga videos, so maaari po nating ma-access po yung YouTube channel ng ating bureau. So pwede niyo pong hanapin sa YouTube yung DA-BAR Official. So meron po tayong mga series of videos po doon na yun nga po
Yes.
na di-discuss kung paano, ano yung mga dapat gawin. And even hanggang sa marketing aspect po, meron po tayong mga video. Pwede niyo pong ma-access po sa YouTube channel po natin. So, isa pa pong katanungan, ma'am. Saan po maaring makakuha po na colony po ng stingless bee kung sakali nga po interesado po talaga? And magkano po kaya po yung isang colony?
Now, I cannot really answer it right now kung saan kukuha, kasi we need to you just communicate with us directly, kasi we need, at saka din kailangan may pagsasanay na kayo eh. We wouldn't advise that you get colonies na hindi ka pa marunong. So I cannot answer. And also the price, ang isa kasing napapansin ko, ang daming mga lumalabas na prices, because this is not a case of who is the lowest bidder, especially in government projects. Kasi halimbawa yung isang colony, example lang, some will sell at like 5,000, some will sell at 4,000, some will offer at 1,000. Pero ang liliit ng colony, it's not viable. That's why may standard tayo na talagang colony na pag kinuha mo, it will really prosper. Kasi meron mga based on experience, ang dami kasi nagpapa-assist sa amin. And then nakita namin na kung yung pinag-umpisang colony ay galing sa napakaliliit. I mean, it's just a piece of wood na young bees, which is really very far from the standard colony. Yun po.
So, isa pa pong katanungan. So, kung ano po kaya ma'am yung specific na bee species kung kunwari gusto ko po is for pollination ng gulay or pollination ng mangga or mag-produce lang po simple ng honey, ano po kayang magandang species po ng bee ang pwedeng gamitin or paramihin po?
Yeah, depende sa crop, depende sa ano mo. Halimbawa, kung sige, yung commercial muna, yung high value, halimbawa mangga, talagang stingless bee ang pollinator niya. So yun yung aalagaan mo. Sa avocado, yung mga large scale, mga lanzones and rambutan. Now, pag gulay, pwede yung mga laywan. Well, the stingless bees also pollinate vegetables, magaling, mahusay ding pollinator ang, now all bees are equal in terms of pollination efficiency. Meron lang siyang kanya-kanyang bulaklak. Halimbawa, yung malalaking bulaklak, they are best pollinated by bigger pollinators, yung ating mga pukyutan. Yan yung mga, halimbawa, malalaking bulaklak, mga kalabasa, so mga pukyutan yan, mga laywan. Now, we have also solitary bees. So, I'd like you, well, some of you, alam na rin nyo yung mga solitary bee, yung mga blue-banded bee. They are very good pollinators at sila yung threatened ang population. So, wag niyong pagkamalan sila na pest na because they are pollinators as well. Kaya, madami. But I'd suggest sana na mag-start muna tayo ng local bee species. Pero if you are planting hybrids, kasi okay naman din yung European bees na because they are bigger than the native bee, so they can address well the bigger flowers. Diba, mga hybrid na tayo ngayon sa agriculture, malalaki na yung fruits, malaki yung flower. So it means that the Apis mellifera may work well with these species. Ang ano nga lang, dapat marunong ka ding mag-alaga nitong European bees kasi ito, maganda rin, but it is maselan, it is high capitalization.
So yun po ma'am. Pahabol po ma'am. So, given na may iba-ibang apoy species.
Yes, yeah. Any
malaki po
other
ba yung
question?
pagkakaiba nung pag-aalaga or pag-manage po nito? With regards po, una, financial. Mas mahal po ba mag-maintain yung kunwari, stingless and then yung European?
Ay, nako, malaki. To give you an idea, doon sa European bee, halimbawa may isa kang colony, pero dapat hindi isa lang yung colony mo. You need to spend, and I know the mellifera beekeepers out there will agree, you need to spend 25 to 30,000 pesos per season. Ang ibig ko sabihin ng per season, it's 1 year, before you can harvest 20 to 25 kilos of honey. Kaya meron ka bang 25,000? Kaya ito din yung dahilan kung bakit dito sa DA, ang pinopromote natin sa magsasaka yung native bees kasi hindi nila kaya ang maintenance ng European bee. For example, European bees would need feeding because during their period, pag tagulan, we need to feed them with sugar. And kung talagang gusto mong maganda ang colony, ang allocation dyan is 1 sack of sugar per colony. Now, the poor farmer, they could hardly buy sugar for the coffee. Yun. Tapos, yung queen, mahirap yung source ng queen. Now, for native bees, it's not really that expensive. With few thousands, pwede ka nang mag-umpisa.
So yun po ma'am. Salamat po sa sagot. So ito po ma'am, isa pa pong tanong. So may kinalaman naman po ma'am sa pest management. Ano po? So ano po kaya maliban sa small hive beetle, ano pa po kaya yung mga dapat tignan or yung mga pest na dapat bantayan po para po sa pag mag-aalaga ka po ng bees?
Okay. Pag stingless bee, meron ding beetle ito. Sa actually in parts of Mindanao, kasi doon merong small hive beetle that are present in European bees. Alam nyo, meron na rin, lumilipat na rin siya sa stingless bees. That's why we should really avoid movement of bees from areas na may small hive beetle. Now, yung stingless bee, talagang meron din siyang beetle, pero it may not be the Athena tumida. It may be kasi may tinatawag tayong hysterid beetle. Hindi naman ito yung gaya ng small hive beetle sa mellifera. Tapos ang stingless bee, kung hindi ka rin marunong yung management, at mahina ang colony, nagkakaroon din to ng mga maggot. So makikita nyo, bakit inuuod tong mga colony? So it means humina yung colony. So ina-abandon na lang din ng mga adults. But nevertheless, basta maganda naman ang forage resources mo, hindi ka masyadong magkakaproblema. Now, sa Apis mellifera, ang dami nating pests and diseases. You have mites, and we could hardly control the mites. We have the chalk brood, na talaga naman we do not have yet any medicine, any control for the chalk brood, and yung predatory birds. So, ito yung problema ng mga mellifera beekeepers. Pag summer, inuubos talaga ng mga ibon yung mga bees nila. Tapos, if they are into queen production, kasi they exerted effort also in producing queens, yung kinakain din ng mga ibon. So, that's the problems.
So, yun po, ma'am. So, meron pa pong isang nagtanong. So, paano daw po ba pinaprocess ang propolis po, ma'am?
It should be harvested fresh. Kaya yung sa loob, huwag kayong kukuha doon sa labas ng colony kasi hindi propolis yun. Kaya choose this soft. And then, you air dry, huwag nating lalagay sa init ng araw. And then you can sell the dried propolis. Kung gusto mong i-process, you dilute it with alcohol para you can sell the extract. Pwede mong gamitin.
Sige po, ma'am. So, siguro po proceed na po tayo sa last question. Ito po, ma'am, ito po yung parang walang kamatayang tanong pagdating po sa pagpili ng honey. So, marami po kasi yung mabibili lang sa counters, sa groceries. So, totoo po ba, ma'am, na kapag yung tumigas, yung sa ilalim ng bote, fake honey po ito? Pero ano po yung mga steps para para malaman na authentic yung honey po na bibilin po natin?
Alam nyo, chemical analysis lang ang magsasabi niyan. Kasi hindi ba siya yung nag-cream yung honey ay peki na yon. Kasi yung mga galing sa family ng sunflower, we call it yung mga compositae family or yung mga Asteraceae family, nagkikream talaga, especially kung malamig yung panahon. Minsan, miski hindi malamig yung panahon, nagsisettle. Pero makita mo naman yun kasi kung asukal, kung crystal, minsan sa ibabaw, tapos kitang-kita mo yung sugar crystals. Pero, pa din, chemical analysis pa din yung makakapagpatunay ng authenticity ng honey. So, simple chemical analysis o yung recent study namin, yung isotope, pwede tayong mag-ano doon. Pero better still, mag-alaga na kayo ng sarili nating bee so that we can be sure that what we are taking is authentic honey. Tayo na lang ang kukuha doon sa hive. Kukutsarahin na lang natin yun and it's really pure.
Sige po, maraming salamat po sa pagsagot. So bago po tayo magtapos, ma'am, so maaari lang po sana namin itanong kung ano po ba yung mga pwedeng i-avail na programs, trainings, and paano sa UPLB program po. Ano po? So flash ko lang po yung Facebook page po ng UPLB program para po kung may additional na katanungan po kayo, pwede nyo na pong direct na itanong.
Pwede po yung magtanong doon.
So, ano po kaya mga programs na pwede po nilang nating ma-avail sa UPLBB program po? Ano po?
Yung basic beekeeping, yan. yan yung dati pa ito ano. So, but we will have a schedule siguro by August. We have already conducted at least 4 this year. Pero we will schedule siguro mga 3 pa within the year. So, batayan nyo na lang po sa ating Facebook page. At saka kung may katanungan po kayo, may gusto ko yung itanong, i-message nyo lang po kami and we will be very willing to answer your questions.
So yun po, so isang tanong pa ma'am, pwede po kaya namin i-share yung presentation po ninyo para ma-download po ng mga viewers po natin?
Yeah, basta i-acknowledge lang nila.
Apo. So, yun po muli po, no? Maraming salamat po. Ayun po. So maraming salamat po ma'am sa paganyaya sa invitation po namin na mag-talk po.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Maraming salamat po. So, okay na po ma'am. So, sa susunod po ulit ma'am, wag po kayong manawa.
Yeah.
Alam po namin, nagretiro na po kayo pero tatawagin pa rin po namin.
Yeah. Basta usaping bubuyog. Okay.
Apo. So, maraming salamat po muli. Sige po ma'am.